Welcome to the Pinnacle Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Randal Langley, President of Christian Life School of Theology Global. The opportunity to share biblical wisdom with kingdom-minded leaders in the areas of lordship, leadership, and lifestyle led me to start this show. My desire is that through this podcast, you'll be equipped with relevant tools to maximize your leadership potential and reach the pinnacle of your calling. You'll hear from myself and many other successful leaders who are recognized experts on these topics and many others. We hope you enjoy this show.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Jonathan Langley, Dr. Langley's son, and I'm today's guest host. What is the best way to ensure a healthy ministry? Be a healthy leader. In today's episode, we're sharing part of a message that Dr. Langley recently gave at a leadership conference at Ignite Church in Vermont. He shares practical insights that you can use to develop in yourself healthy leadership habits, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. We hope that this show encourages you to lead in a loving and healthy way for yourself and for your ministry.
Because, leaders can be hard chargers. I'm kind of like that. And like Lori said, it's just so, the strategy of the enemy is to get you so busy and just worked up about stuff. And so this concept of not going anywhere that peace won't take you is powerful. Learning to, and as leaders, let me just restate it in this manner. Learn to lead at the pace of peace. And when you lose your peace, remember where you lost it, go back there. Pick it up again, and then begin to move forward at the pace of peace. I mentioned this also, play, the word play. I meet a lot of pastors who are they're burnt out. I'm like, well, when was the last time you just took some time off? Well, I'm too busy to take some time off. Years ago, when I was a young pastor, we were in Portland. I was in Portland for a conference, and I met a guy there, and he had lost his wife. His family was split up, and he was a very popular minister. And somehow we became friends. He and I became friends because we played racquetball. I used to play competitive tournament racquetball, and he was into that too. So anyhow, we're driving in his car, and he looks over at me, tears streaming down his face, and he says, "Randal, don't ever do what I did." I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "Well, I was too busy. I didn't spend time with my family. I didn't spend time, basically he's saying I didn't spend time prioritizing what mattered most." And he said, "Please don't do that." And I was just a young guy, and I was like, "Well, yes, sir." Because there's this mindset, bless God, I'd rather burn out for God rather than rest out for God. And I'm thinking, either way, you're out. I don't think that either one of those is a good strategy, right? And so take some time to get some hobbies, do some fun stuff, enjoy yourself. And then, kind of wrapped up in that is just this idea of just tending to your physical man, right? Are you eating right? Are you putting good fuel in this Ferrari, right? I know, you gotta give me a ride in that car, bro. I walked out there and I looked at the Mustang and I turned away and I thought, wait a second. That had double exhaust on both sides. I turned back, yep, that's a GT. Okay, that's smoking right there. Does that take premium fuel, right? So you don't want to put some low-octane garbage in there. He doesn't open the gas tank and stuff Lay's potato chips in that thing, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Like Lori said, I'm flawed. I get tempted, but we try and live by this idea. And again, I live with this woman, and sometimes I'll be sitting there, and I've started this new doctoral program, and it's stressful, right? I wound up, they didn't give me very good academic counseling, and I wound up doubling my course load accidentally. And I'm trying to run a global organization, preach on weekends, do a lot of things, and I'm like taking the pace of like a full-time student at the doctoral level. And I'm working and reading voraciously. So this thing called stress eating is a real thing. So I'm sitting there like stuffing chips in, and Lori will come along. She said, "You don't want any more of those." I'm like, "I don't?" "No, you don't." "Okay." So, partner up a little bit and just Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Sleep. Sometimes I'm so tired. You know what? You just need to go to bed. Take a couple days off and do nothing but sleep, okay? Get your recovery. Your body needs that kind of rest and recovery. You get one body. There's no do-overs. Most everything else, you can reimagine your mind, you can reimagine your spiritual life, you can do things, a lot of things over, right? But with your body, when your body's done, it's done. Right? If I died, I'm confident Lori would call me back from the dead. And if I did something stupid, she'd say, "You're not dying that way. I'm going to call you back and then I'm going to kill you and then you can die." That's probably how that would go. But steward your body well, friends. Enjoy life. I think Jesus wants us to enjoy life, right? Life to the full. And then I mentioned priorities. Don't say yes to everything. Stop saying yes. A good no is better than a bad yes, right? Write that. If you don't get anything else out of this conference, walk away with that. A good no is better than a bad yes. There were so many times I lost my peace because I didn't have my priorities right, and everything in life was intense. One of the things, and I'm just, we're just real people, right? And one of the things with Lori and I that has been, the goodness and grace of God through all the trauma that we've been through recently, and really we pioneered churches in the inner city. I had death threats on my life. We had all kinds of crazy stuff happening, right? Cars stolen, people literally, I'm not speaking evangelistically now, I'm telling the truth. People shot and stabbed and left on our front church steps for dead, okay? So you're talking about an intense environment. So we've had things that God has done in and through our lives. If we're the clay, sometimes God puts you in the fire, it's called a kiln, right? To make you a useful vessel that he can use. And so we've been in some kilns in ministry. But the kind of trauma and stuff that we've had in the last couple of years has just been off the chain, inexplicable. However, I will say this. Sometimes we say, well, whatever the devil meant for destruction, God can turn it around and use it for good, right? And we've experienced that. As brutal as some of these things are, I got to tell you, God has used these experiences to push a reset button in our lives. And it's been so powerful. It's been so precious. And I feel like I'm on my honeymoon again with my wife, only better. And not just our marriage and our relationship personally. When you almost lose someone to death like that, it kind of jerks the slack out of you. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, whoa, wait a second. Where are my priorities? And so we've had to reassess, reimagine who are we and what are we really doing and what really matters. And to allow God to push some reset buttons in us. I wouldn't go back and ask for that experience again, but I'm so grateful for the goodness of God and how he used those things to push some reset buttons in our life. And so what I would say to you, my friends, is maybe don't wait for some traumatic experience where God will use that to push why don't you just go ahead and push the reset button yourself, right? And just contemplate the goodness of God and what adjustments you need to make and maybe in some of your priorities. And then the P number 9, and I'm going to do a course on these, 10-session courses, is perception or perceive. That's our intuition. We're mature leaders, and you need to lean into the things that you sense in your spirit. Some of the worst mistakes I've made in leadership over my life are when I overran what I was perceiving, but I had a strategy or plan, and I didn't want to change that because, maybe I was a little bullheaded or stubborn, I don't know. But we have an intuitive sense that God is up to something. We need to learn to lean into that more often, right? Be willing to lay your plans down and make sure that they're in alignment with what God is saying and doing at that time. He sees the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end. And that's how he leads us. And then lastly, number 10 is, I just used, because I needed another P, I used the word power. But what I'm really talking about here is your strengths. And let me just say this. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And I remember John Maxwell teaching this years ago. I was just a young pastor, and it was so good. It really liberated me because I had always heard, work on your weaknesses. Work on your weaknesses. John Maxwell said, that's a bunch of garbage. Whoever told you to work on your weaknesses? They're your weaknesses. The reason they're your weaknesses is because that's not where you're wired. He said, if I were you, I'd spend most of your time working on your strengths. Be aware of your weaknesses. If you staff with people who can cover your weaknesses. So it's not being oblivious to and unaware of your weaknesses, but they're never going to be your strengths. And you're going to wear yourself out. You're going to be discouraged because you're not getting good at your weaknesses. God has given you a strength and unique abilities in certain areas. And if I were you, I would say no to the things you're not strong at, and yes to the things you're strong at, and staff to the other things that you're weak in. And then you'll have a well-rounded ministry, an organization, and then you can lean into the things that are your strengths. That's your power zone, I call that. That's where you're most effective. So don't sacrifice the growth and potential of your strengths by overemphasizing your weaknesses. Be aware of them, but lean into your unique wiring, the things that God gifted and equipped you to do. Amen? Again, you can't say yes to everything. You can't run around. You can't be a people pleaser. You got to be a God pleaser. And he doesn't want you to burn out. He wants you to go the distance. He wants you to enjoy life.
Thanks for listening to the Pinnacle Leaders Podcast. This show can be found on Apple Podcasts, cpnshows.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have suggestions for this show, we'd love to know what you think. Visit www.randallangley.com to share your thoughts or connect with me on social media. You can also find other resources and interviews with my previous guests on my website, Facebook, and Instagram. We exist to serve kingdom-minded leaders like you. Grace and peace, my friends.